Just so you know, I am a voodoo priestess. What has happened on a first date that made you run for the hills? She spent 3 hours talking about herself and her on-again off-again relationship with a guy she lives with. I couldn't get a word in edgeways. There wasn't a second date. Somebody replied, I had a very similar experience, but it included a litany of lies. On her profile, she said that she was something like 5'9", 70 kilograms, brunette, no piercings or tattoos, single, and child-free, among a bunch of other things. In reality, she was about 5 foot nothing, well over 100 kilograms, blonde, didn't even try to hide the tattoo on her arm, and very clearly had piercings. She spent much of the next 3 hours telling me about how hard it was dealing with her baby's expensive and debilitating medical problems while the kid's father was in prison. Everything in her profile was a lie. We have universal healthcare here and the baby's problem was webbed fingers. At some point she told me about how the father had another year to serve for beating the hell out of some guy he saw her with. On the upside, I bought a new pair of sunglasses for that date and am still wearing them more than a decade later. The casual revelation of her engagement ring. 3 dates, 3 women. 1. She said I love you. 2. She talked about her stalker ex having a shotgun. 3. She asked to one day play the role of my dead wife. I've never been married. I went on a date with a girl, and she was afraid to mention her stalker ex, who used guns to threaten her. She let it all out on date 3, because she was drunk, and I was such a nice guy she didn't want to see me get hurt. I realized in that moment the only reason she had started dating me was because I am a big guy, and she was hoping I would scare the dude off. So I waited outside her house for her stalker ex, and lo and behold, he had a sawed-off shotgun, so I called the cops. They heard illegal firearm and snooping around the house and showed up in no time. He is still in jail. She told me she had never been able to get the cops to show up, and I told her that was because she was framing the whole thing in how it affected her, but she needed to know how to tell the cops what they wanted to hear. I mentioned that he was armed with an illegal weapon. I mentioned that he was snooping around houses. I didn't mention that he knew a person and that the gun was probably not going to get used. I gave a basic description, and when they asked for a race, I said it's too dark to tell. I didn't tell them if he was more German or more Dutch, maybe he was Italian, or... She went on a few more dates with me, but I could tell she wasn't actually interested, she just wanted a big guy to chase away the bad guy. No hard feelings about the girl. It isn't like she knew what to do or had a lot of options. I hope she is well and in a healthy relationship. When we went to order drinks, the bartender had his back turned while cutting limes. We probably waited 15 seconds for him to notice us. I ordered my beer and she screamed at him for 45 seconds about disrespecting her before ordering a gin and tonic. I drank that amber ale in about 4 minutes flat before getting the hell out of there. Gotta make sure not to waste a pint no matter the situation. In our late 20s, I was meeting a person I went to preschool with at a busy place in NYC. I had gotten there earlier and was just waiting to be seated. She got there in a whirlwind of chaos and demanded to be seated immediately because I walk with a cane. This was wildly uncomfortable, as I didn't need, ask, or want special attention, let alone for her to do it. Once seated, she did the same thing and yelled at the waiter when they came over to take our drink order after minutes. I immediately got up, apologized to the waiter, went back and told her how childish and rude she was in a multitude of ways. She started talking about all the guys she knows and all the parties she's been to. She didn't spare me a single detail about the other people she was dating and how she felt about every single one of them. She went on to judge every single person in every social circle she belonged to. All the while I wasn't able to get a word in, so at some point I mentally checked out and just enjoyed my coffee while reducing her to background noise. I replied or commented every few paragraphs so I didn't seem rude. The kicker, she went on to tell our mutual friends that she absolutely loved our outing, and that I was an amazing listener. The reality of the situation was that by the end of the night I was one gossip story away from an aneurysm. It was so surreal. By the end of the night, I never got to know her and she never got to know me. Instead, I got to know about the worst of everybody without ever having asked. I genuinely went home feeling like I was poisoned, and yet she had the time of her life talking to somebody. I simultaneously felt bad for her and angry at her. She was talking about how she was the hottest girl at her high school in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. Then when we were making out, she said I had a receding hairline. I don't, but even if I did, what the hell? I could tell that she was negging me and apparently kind of a narcissist. Later, after 2 rejections from some friends of mine, she had a breakdown on one of their lawns. Sometimes the red flags aren't as glaring as the other instances in this thread. I do hope she's doing better now though. We were in the back of her van making out. Not a family van, a work van, that she drove and was sleeping in. She would sleep in it parked at the front of her house because she had to throw her mattress out because she got bed bugs. Anyway, halfway through making out with her, she took out a can of air duster and started huffing it and asked me if I wanted some. Then she fell over and hit her head hard on the wall of her van. I didn't really run for the hills, I made sure she was okay, and we kept making out for a while. But I didn't call her back after that. I went on a date with a girl, and 5 minutes into the date, she started talking about how she was recently in a mental asylum. Then she started showing me pictures of a guy who she recently spent the night with. After all that, she took me to her ranch and let me ride her horse, which admittedly was really cool. But we didn't go on a second date. I met a woman for coffee who told me that she was looking for a traditional gentleman who would buy her a specific expensive designer coat as a gesture of goodwill. When I said I'd think about it after we dated for a while, she played the "don't you love me" angle and really pushed for it. I'd met her less than an hour prior and our texting had been brief. Upon further refusal, the 30-year-old woman proceeded to have a literal tantrum right there in front of me, tears and everything. I could physically feel my dong recoiling from her. I beat a hasty retreat from that situation. After the first date, she sent my mom a message on Facebook talking about how she couldn't wait to meet her future mother-in-law. She just asked me who she was, how the date went, and then she verified with me that no, in fact, they wouldn't be meeting. No, in fact, she was not going to be getting her as a daughter-in-law. Somebody replied, I had a date with a girl back when I was living at my parents' house, and the next morning I got out of the shower to find her with my parents. She said, we have got something to tell you, to which I was very confused. My parents clearly thought we were announcing she was pregnant or something. We wanted to tell you we're officially a couple. This is someone I met the day before and had a single date with. That was my shortest ever relationship. I don't know how to describe this. Her table manners were odd. Instead of just eating her food, she ripped it all apart. She ordered some type of sandwich and took the entire sandwich apart and ripped all the meat and lettuce up, like mincing it with her fork. She dunked pieces of the sandwich bread in her water and ate it. I don't know why it bothered me so much. She was really pretty, so I pushed past it. She brings up past relationships, not necessarily talking about exes, but she seemed to change and become visually aggravated with me when I mentioned my last relationship, like she was already possessive and jealous from the very first date. She was basically a raccoon. My red flag alert was blaring at this point, so I paid for the meal and told her I had work the next day so I couldn't come back to her place. She managed to kill my super high drive, something I thought impossible. I met her for a first date at a restaurant bar of her choosing. I was nursing a beer when she was over 15 minutes late. She walks in, very obviously already drunk, and immediately orders 4 shots, and a beer. She pounded all 4 shots, took a huge swig of beer, and ordered 4 more shots. The bartender, awesome dude, gave me a heads up that she was about to run up a $100 plus tab and make a scene when I refused to pay for it. Dude said he'd split it now if I wanted to dip out. I slipped the dude a 20 and tried to leave. She ran out into the parking lot, saw me leaving, and began to belligerently scream at me for ghosting her in the middle of her date. I told her this wasn't a good fit and left. I don't know what happened to her, but thanks to the bartender for being a stand-up dude and letting me escape a bad situation before it had a chance to turn sour. I went on a date with a woman who started the conversation by saying, just so you know, I am a voodoo priestess. I immediately knew this wasn't going to go any further than this one date. We had dinner and the night came to an end. I told her to have a good night, and she went in for a hug. Mid-hug, she said, "Embrace me." It was the weirdest thing ever. I lost her number and went about my life happily. Back in 2003, I recently moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. I decided I was going to sign up for Match.com and try online dating for the first time. I started messaging a few girls and eventually made a connection and set up a date. We decided to meet at a Chinese bistro. We had discussed that it was going to be casual, so of course she showed up in an evening gown. First red flag. She was gorgeous and looked great in the gown, but also looked completely out of place. Fight or flight kicked in, but she was hot, so I decided to stay and fight. She stood next to me at the bar and ordered 2 glasses of wine. One she immediately downed, the second she took a sip and turned to me and said hi. Second flag. Kind of. We had some awkward small talk and I mentioned her evening gown. She told me she collects them and decided to wear one tonight to dazzle me. Third flag. But I am staying at this point. We were seated at a table and as the server walked up, she ordered a bottle of wine. Fourth flag. Okay, she likes wine. But she's hot, I'm still in it. We have more awkward small talk and eventually order food, and by the time I have finished my first beer that I had ordered while back at the bar, she already finished the bottle of wine, and orders another. Fifth flag. And now I am planning my escape plan. I stand and ask if she knows where the restrooms are, and as she is pointing in a direction behind me, I turn to look. And I feel a stabbing pain in my right bum cheek, which literally makes me flinch in pain. I grab my ass as I turn to see that she just bit me. She is giggling her face off. Also she is holding a 5-inch long pin, which she just used to stab my bottom. Sixth flag. And I am done. I walk to the bathroom and go in one of the stalls, drop my pants and do a hand sweep of my right ass cheek, and my hand comes back bloody. I use toilet paper and apply pressure to eventually stop the bleeding. I zip up and go stare at myself in the mirror as I wash my hands and have a Pulp Fiction moment, where I say to myself in the mirror, "Okay, go back out there, tell her this evening is over and that you are going home. Don't ever do this online dating stuff again, no more." So I walk out and find the server, I pay the bill and close the check. I tell the server to hold off serving anything until I am finished talking with my date and I am walking to the door. She agrees. As I walk up to the table, I am noticing people are giving me the hairy eyeball and realize that my date is silently sobbing at the table. For some reason I am the asshole in this situation. Maybe they didn't see the assault on my ass, but maybe only the death glare I gave her as I held my ass cheek. I sat down and asked why is she crying. She said that she messed up by drinking so much wine and she thought she was being cute and funny poking me with a hat pin. She said it's an antique and she collects those too. I told her that I was pretty shocked when she stabbed me with it and that my ass was bleeding where she stabbed me. I told her that this evening got off on the wrong foot and that I had already paid the bill and that we should try it again another time. Although I never intended to. With that, she snapped out of her sobbing quietly and began yelling at me, "Wait, you're leaving? You can't leave me." I said, "Look, the evening has taken a bad turn and I just want to go." She stood up and yelled, "No one leaves me, I leave them," and started marching to the door of the restaurant, forgetting that there were 3 steps she had to walk down towards the entrance of the restaurant. She took a tumble down the stairs, purse flying, pashmina wrapped around her foot, and landed hard on the bottom step. As I stood there, I was like, what? Could this get any worse? And it did. She started crying and holding her ankle. Servers and manager came running, as well as an off-duty paramedic. They started working on her there, icing and elevating her left leg, because she might have broken her ankle. The paramedic called 911 and within minutes the ambulance was there. They got her on the gurney and were wheeling her out the door of the restaurant to the ambulance. Throughout this whole scene, I never said a word. I was just an observer hoping this was all a terrible dream. And hoping that as the ambulance doors closed, I could just walk to my car unnoticed. Nope, not so lucky. She started screaming for her boyfriend. The guy she had been on a date with. Everyone looked at me. I started to say, wait, hold on. I'm not her boyfriend. When I was cut off by the paramedic and he said, they are taking her to Presbyterian Medical Center, follow them. I got in my car and was taking my time, but the ambulance was waiting for me. I pulled up behind them and flashed my lights and they took off. Throughout the drive to the hospital, I was thinking of just going home, but I did feel some responsibility to at least see this nightmare through to the end. It was a light night at the ER and she was getting the full treatment from everyone because she was gorgeous and dressed in an evening gown. She had x-rays which showed no broken bones, so they put her in an air cast and crutches. When she was released, I was there to take her home. She wasn't going to be able to drive her car, which was still at the restaurant. We drove silently for the most part, except when she had to tell me where to turn. We eventually pulled up to her house, and I had to help her out of the car and up to her front door, where she asked me to come in. I said the evening was eventful, but I have to go. She then said, well, the evening doesn't have to be a complete disaster, come on in, sit back on the couch and let me take care of you. I literally ran off that porch laughing hysterically like Curly from the Three Stooges until I got in my car and hauled my butt out of there. I deleted my account and never used Match.com again. Worst date ever. Thanks for watching till the end. I'm glad you enjoy my videos. Do you have any first date horror stories you want to share? Tell us all about it in the comments below. And subscribe to protect yourself from a bin in the bum.